Yes. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back on this beautiful Wednesday morning, the 11th of February 2026. Thank you, everyone that has kept it locked on the Football Tribe UG channel. Thank you so much to all our new subscribers. Those that have recently joined the community, I say welcome to the Football Tribe UG community. Thank you for choosing us, and I hope you continue to choose us every single day by watching our content in the short section, in the video section, and the lives. And for those of you that watch our live broadcasts long after they've ended, we do not take your love and support for granted. For the usual suspects, people like Pedri, people like LFC, people like Shanov, people like Isabella Martin. Thank you so much for choosing to be part of the Football Tribe UG community every single day. For those of you that haven't already done so, please go over to the video section and watch that content that we did share with you. When we attempted to answer two questions: who will stop Manchester United? And of course, I think we got a little bit of a test to that yesterday, as Man United had to hold their breath and forced West Ham in a 1-all draw late on in that game. And then we also attempted to answer the question: who could be Manchester United's next manager? So those two questions we attempted to answer into separate videos. Please go over there to the channel and watch that content and give us your thoughts down in the comment section. So welcome back from the Tuesday action from the Premier League match day 26. Of course, beyond the Premier League, there was plenty of action. There was a game between, I think, Freiburg against Hertha Berlin in the quarterfinals of the DFB Pokal Cup. That one ended 1-1 after extra time, and then Freiburg went through on penalties. Como did reach their first semi-finals since 1985-86 when they knocked out Napoli at the quarterfinals of the Coppa Italia. That game ended 1-1 in normal time before a 7-6 win on penalties for Cesc Fabregas's side. So beautiful, spirited fight over there in that regard. But like the case oftentimes is, our focus is going to be turning back to the Premier League, where I think we got some really interesting results depending on where you fall. I often say about football that where there are celebrations, there is commiserations on one end, because as people celebrate one win, others are celebrating a loss, and sometimes a draw that leaves no side happy. And in fact, for yesterday's only draw from those games, West Ham United will feel like they lost a game of football. They will feel like they dropped all 3 points because they were the ones in the lead. They are the ones who led the game for the majority of that game. And somehow they let Man United in to share the points. So quite difficult result to take in. And I said this after the game: if West Ham do eventually get relegated, and that's a big if they ever get relegated out of the Premier League this season, they will look back at two games: the game against Nottingham Forest and the game against Man United, as games where they squandered points. Because for the game against Nottingham Forest, it was 1-1 until I think the 85th minute plus, when they conceded a penalty that Morgan Gibbs-White converted to make sure that Nottingham Forest won that game by 2-1. Now, as of yesterday, they led that game from the 50th minute, thanks to that goal by Thomas Soucek, until the 96th minute when they conceded the equalizer from a second half substitute, Benjamin Sesko, with a bit of a cheeky goal. Quite clever how he takes on that ball. So that's what I felt about that, and you could almost see it on Nuno Espirito Santo's face. The sort of I don't know, the sad face, the understanding, the conceptualization of that they had squandered this one. Because, and the reason as to why I say they will only have themselves to blame is because they had two glorious opportunities where they go through to try and get a second goal, but could never, make it count. they could never make it count. And you had, for example, one counter attack where Callum Wilson goes through, and instead of playing in Magasa, he doesn't. He doesn't. He doesn't play him through, and that you know, and that's what that means is that the game stays 1-0, and you could see again. I think it was yes, it was Nuno Espirito Santo who was signaling him, play the ball across. You had, but he decided to go for himself. And those are the things we keep talking about. There's a thin line between selfishness and playing for the team, because when the stakes are that high, it doesn't matter if you're a striker and you want all the numbers yourself. It doesn't matter if you want to score, because what matters is that the team wins. What matters are those 3 significant points that could save the team for you, So really, I felt that in that moment, they lost the plot because they had chances to go 2-0 up, and if they had gone 2-0 up, the game would have run away from Man United. But because they decided to be, I don't know, not complacent, but to drop it, there's no way to put it. There's no better way to put it, So it was just a very, very disappointing result for West Ham United. Like I said, West Ham United will feel that they dropped points. Meanwhile, it wasn't the only draw on the day, because Chelsea were equally squandered their 2-0 lead against Leeds United. But we'll get to that bit. It's a game where Manchester United dominated some of the key affairs when it came to attacking, when it came to ball possession. They had to the tune of 65%. They had 2 blocked shots. They had 4 shots off target and 3 shots on target, but only one could find through. Now, Man United, we had a very unchanged team from the team that has played all the last couple of games where they've been winning. Seny Lomans in goal, Luke Shaw, Harry Maguire, Lisandro Martinez, Diego Dalot, but Harry Maguire had to be withdrawn in the second half for what felt like a hamstring injury. I do not think it's that serious. I think it could be a minor one, where perhaps if he were to miss some football, it could be for about 2 or 3 weeks at best, because he could still play on. He walked off the pitch quite comfortably, and they brought on Lenny Yoro. Then the midfield of Kobe Maino and Casemiro remained Bruno Fernandes, Matas Cunha, Amadou Diallo, and Bryan Mbeumo. All you felt was that Manchester United lacked that sharpness. They lacked sometimes they lacked the kind of electric speed that you need. They lacked I don't want to say composure, because it's not like they created lots of chances where, it was due to composure that they lost the plot, that they could not convert. But they just lacked that momentum going forward. They just could not break through what was almost like a back 5 whenever they defended, because the captain, Gerard Bowen, put in quite a shift for West Ham defensively. On the other side, where you have Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Konstantinos Mavropanos, Axel Disasi. I thought Axel Disasi was a standout performer in that backline. Malik Diouf having a good day. Thomas Soucek, and the man of the match kind of performance for him as well. Freddie Potts, Matas Fernandes, Somerville, as well as Valentin Castellanos, known as Teti, there leading the lines. But West Ham did the okay things. They did the kind of things that you expect a team battling relegation to do, to not have majority of the ball, concede possession to you, but defend their goal quite carelessly, to deny you those spaces that you could, and need to try and nick the ball. Of course, Man United did create some situations, but they just could not make them count. For example, there's a point where you expect maybe Amadou Diallo on another given day to be shooting the ball, and he doesn't. He decides to pass it, and it is intercepted right in the area, and things like that. So I thought, for me, the standout performers for West Ham, there were Axel Disasi, Gerard Bowen, Thomas Soucek, Matas Fernandes. For me, there was really, really standout performers. But also Valentin Castellanos up front there. He tried to, with the press and all, he kept running. He never stopped running. For Manchester United side, I did feel that it was a bit of a muted performance from all their key players. I never got the feeling that Matthias Cunha found his footing in the game. Brani Belmo didn't get the same feel. Bruno Fernandes, you know, that. So it sort of felt like, again, a muted game for Man United for the better part of it until, excuse me, my amount of yawning in the morning ought to be investigated. But anyways, so in the end, it finished 1-1 between the two sides. But like I said, West Ham will feel that that's 3 points dropped, not 2 points dropped. They will feel that's 3 points dropped. They'll feel it as a loss because, I mean, like I said, they score in the 50th minute through Soshek, and then the equalizer comes in the 6th minute of stoppage time with Brani Belmo providing the assist there. And it's just hard. And I said this, and I'll say it again. Football is cruel. It can be hard on you, and it was hard on Man United. On West Ham yesterday in that draw. Speaking of draws, Chelsea equal 2-all draw against Leeds United. A very dominant Chelsea performance. A kind of performance where they created lots of chances. Cole Palmer with the miss of the season. I mean, tapping in from close range became pairing the ball over the bar from a cross or a layout by Moises Caicedo with literally the final kick of the game, So West Ham felt that they lost 3 points. Chelsea will know that they equally lost 3 points. For starters, like I said, they led the game by 2-0. And for the 8th time in the last 13 games, Chelsea got a penalty because some lunatic, some fool decided to push Joao Pedro. And I'm thinking to myself, how dumb do you have to be to do that? How dumb do you have to be to do that kind of thing? Because it was so dumb that it's so blatant. And when you push a player with both hands in the box, what do you expect? As soon as they feel your arms on their back, they're going to hit the floor. They're going to hit the turf, regardless of whether it's minimal contact or pressure that you apply in the push. It's just stupid. I just don't know why he was doing it in the first place. But like I said, Chelsea were dominant, got the lead through Joao Pedro, who provided with Cole Palmer providing the assist as he broke with the line-breaking pass for Joao Pedro to run to. I thought the goalkeeper, Dalo Calo, could have done really, really, really better in that situation because when Joao Pedro, receives that ball, he takes a first touch, and I think it was the second touch that was quite heavy. If Dalo had come out of his goal quite quickly, he would have perhaps had a better chance of intercepting that. But he has that moment where he sort of comes out and then hesitates a bit for a second or a second and a half, and then decides to go for it. And because of that hesitation, Joao Pedro is able to catch up with his heavy touch and then find the space to flick the ball over the goalkeeper to give Chelsea the lead. And it was 1-0. Then in the second half, like I said, it was that penalty from Cole Palmer. Dalo Calo was nowhere near it. Of course, he was sent to the opposite side. But like I said, the defender was stupid. That's more like amateur football. I understand mistakes are part of the game, but I do have certain expectations for players that play professional football at a certain level. When you're playing at the level of the Premier League, when you're playing for a team like Leeds with all their history, when you play in these professional leagues, there are certain errors that you ought to cut out of the game. There are certain things we do not expect to be happening. Not because they are immune to the game, but because we expect you to be very professional, that certain mistakes should be below you, and yet they decided to do that. Then on the other side, because Cole Palmer's goal was scored in the 58th minute. Then in the 66th minute, Chelsea conceded a penalty thanks to a foul by Moises Caicedo, who fouled somebody in the area. I don't remember exactly who. And then a minute later, Nomenka stepped up and converted the penalty. Excuse me. I've said this before. My yawning in the morning ought to be investigated. I don't know why, especially for our morning broadcast. It's becoming something, an undesirable occurrence or routine. But anyways, so it's 2-1, and then about approximately 6 minutes later, Anua Okafor scores to make it 2-2. And then still in that moment, Moises Caicedo is suspect. He fails to control the ball. He sort of ball watches as the Leeds player plays that ball in the box. Then he goes from a football player to being a coach or a director of some sort, pointing where other Chelsea players should go and how they should defend. It was a bit of a scrappy moment, and then bang, Noah Okafor scores to make it 2-2. And eventually that's how the game ends. But like I said, it was a very dominant performance from Chelsea. And I said this the other day that football can be so unfair that oftentimes the result that you get to read off your screen does not reflect exactly what may have transpired on the pitch. And for me, this is one of those results. This is one of those results. I didn't think Chelsea deserved to lose. I didn't think Leeds had done enough to deserve a point in that game. Same way, I do not think Man United had done enough to deserve a point from that game against West Ham, but it is what it is. So when you look at Chelsea, of course, dominating possession to the tune of 65%, they had 4 shots on target compared to Leeds' only 2, which went through. They had 8 shots off target for Chelsea, as Leeds had 0. I mean, they had about 4 corner kicks for Chelsea compared to Leeds' 1. So Chelsea dominated every aspect, key aspect of the game. They created all the right situations. There's a moment where Enzo Fernandez tries to go for it, but then he slices the ball in a manner that it almost arcs away, in a curve away from in front of Cole. But Cole Palmer, with the miss of the season, no football fan, no football enthusiast was watching that moment and did not wonder how on God's green earth did Cole Palmer miss from close range. I mean, the ball needed a simple tap in and it hits the back of the net. He was basically alone. The Leeds backline were caught napping. Moises Caicedo crosses the ball through or lays it for Cole Palmer. He's by himself, and then he taps it over the bar. Now, if the ball, for example, had hit anywhere other than his foot, I'd say a bit unfortunate. For example, in the Man United game, we had a goal line clearance by Aaron Wan-Bissaka with his knee. I think it was from a set piece that Bruno Fernandes quite played smartly in sort of a typical training session kind of setup play for United to try and find the equalizer. But Aaron Wan-Bissaka, of course, Mads Hermansen in the West Ham goal had been caught napping literally. But, using his knee, Aaron Wan-Bissaka clears the lines. Now, in this particular case, I would think if the ball had hit Cole Palmer on his knee or on somewhere on his studs or on shin, I would understand. But he takes the best of his foot to the ball, and somehow it just goes over the bar. You ought to watch the moment to sort of understand it or to comprehend what I'm talking about. I just go and search Cole Palmer's goal miss versus Leeds, and you're so poor. But they tried everything. Chelsea, like I said, dominant performance. I thought Joshua Achepong and Trevor Chalobah did not give the best of performances. Marco Correa had to be withdrawn at halftime for Joel Hato. I don't know what the issue was there. Moises Caicedo did not have a good day in office. We had 6 yellow cards in the game, with 3 for Chelsea and 3 for Leeds. For Malo Gusto, Achepong, actually Chelsea had 4. We had about 7. So Malo Gusto, Achepong, Moises Caicedo, and Cole Palmer, whereas Gabriel Goodmanson, Banov, as well as Bano and James Justin got the yellow cards on the Leeds side. Now, as well as Sean Longstaff, by the way. So as many as 8. Okay. Hi, regards from Takie. That is OR06K. Hi, how are you doing? How is Takie? Greetings to you too from Kampala, Uganda, where I do come to you live from, and it's 42 minutes past the hour of 9 a.m. I suspect that should be the time over there in Takie. How is Takie? How is Istanbul? So for me, like I said, I think Cole Palmer had an okay performance until that golden goal miss. But yeah, he had a very wonderful performance for him. Enzo Fernandez, not his best day in office. William Estava will beg for another day. Joao Pedro, I thought he looked sharp. He looked okay. He did score. He created some threatening situations. There's another attempt he had go wide of the mark. Then there's another moment. I don't remember who he was. I think it was by Pedro Neto. Yes, Pedro Neto. In attempting to cross the ball, he was this close to score because the ball bounces off and goes just wide of the mark, really. So, like I said, Chelsea were dominant. They created all the possible situations that you would want them to create in terms of trying to find a goal. But unfortunately for them, it did not pan out the way they had hoped. And that's the nature of football. That's the nature of football, unfortunately. Sometimes you get the results, sometimes you don't. But I thought Chelsea's performance had been worthy of 3 points. Then away to the Hill Dixon Stadium, Everton did lose to AFC Bournemouth. AFC Bournemouth picking up their form at the right moment in the season in a game that saw Everton complete it with a madness following the sending off of Jack O'Brien there. But Ilman Ndiaye had scored the penalty in the 42nd minute of the first half to give Everton the lead. And then Ryan, the 19-year-old signed from Vasco da Gama in Brazil, scored in his second start for AFC Bournemouth. Remember, he scored over the weekend in their 1-1 draw against Aston Villa, which was his first full debut. There's a game that he had come on as a second half substitute. So he's looking really, really sharp. Adrian Trafford providing the assist there with one. It was a beautiful cross run at the back end of the post, putting his head to it, and a bang, it was a goal. And then Adil, Adil scored the other to make it 2-1 for for Bournemouth before the sending off. And on Iwala's side were able to see it through. Kampala, Uganda, hi Istanbul, Israel. We love Africa as Turkish Muslims and humanists. Uganda and Turkey have suffered of military coups in the past. We have so much in common. Greetings. Thank you so much, OR, there for your kind comments and for the love that you've sent to Ugandans. I sure to be pass it on to those that are not regulars on the channel. Anyways, so yeah. That was the result from the Hill Dixon Stadium. A very, very important result for AFC Bournemouth. For those of you that are care to know, like I said, they are getting to pick up form in the right time of the season. If you're Bournemouth, this is a very, very key moment to begin picking up results. For example, their next game for Bournemouth will be away to West Ham United against a team that is fighting relegation. But that notwithstanding, when you look at their last 5 results now, in addition to their victory against Everton, is that they've beaten up against Liverpool, they've beaten up against Wolverhampton Wanderers, a very important draw against Aston Villa, and then of course one against Brighton and Hove Albion. So it's quite a very, very good result. Hi Pedri, how are you doing? I think De Zerbi should have went to a bigger club after he left Brighton, not Marseille. I mean, not disrespect that. I hope that's you mean not disrespect to Marseille, because Olympique Marseille is one of the biggest clubs in Europe. May not be in the top five, but it is definitely one of the biggest clubs there. Unfortunately, sometimes things just do not work out. Imagine you are dating Miss Spain, very beautiful, and it just doesn't work out. And then everybody would be wondering, how did you dump such a beautiful person? And you remind the world, yeah, it's more than beauty that sustains a relationship. So even for you, perhaps would come to understand that it just did not work out. So for Roberto De Zerbi, he married a very beautiful wife. It just did not work out. The marriage was good for as long as it lasted until January when they crashed out of the UEFA Champions League, but we're going to discuss that in a bit. And then, that weekend result against PSG did not leave him painted in any glory whatsoever. So anyways, back to the Premier League briefly as we wrap up what we did witness from match day 26 on Tuesday. Of course, it does fall through on Wednesday. We will get to those fixtures in a bit as well. But yeah, very, very beautiful result there for Bournemouth. Like I said, it sends them to about 37 points on the Premier League clock to ninth place behind Everton. Yes, to ninth place behind Everton because they have a -2 goal difference. Somebody is saying, was payment TV here? We love Africa. Oh, was in payment TV. Okay. So really, that was the result for FC Bournemouth. And then, I don't know what to say about Tottenham Hotspur, guys. Tottenham Hotspurs, I don't know if I were to compare it with teams. They're like the AC Roma of Italian football. They like what team? Oh, please read back. Past ones. Okay. They're like an RB Leipzig of some sort. They're like I'm trying to look at Spanish football. They're like a Sevilla of 5 years ago or so in English football. That's where they stand. But presently, that's not how they are portraying themselves to be. Okay. Was in payment. Here we have Love Africa. I didn't understand the comment particularly well. You say please read back past ones. I've read all your comments. I've read all your comments. I've read all your comments. But thank you so much for your engagement. So, Tottenham Hotspurs losing to a very poor Newcastle side, conceding 3 goals. I said 3 because one was ruled out by VAR. That was Joey Loco's goal in the 44th minute. But just 6 minutes later, that is in the 50th minute of stoppage time, Malik Thiaw scored to give Newcastle a halftime lead. And then when they came back for the second half, in the 64th minute, Achai Gray scores to make it 1-1. That is in the 64th minute. 4 minutes later, Jacob Ramsey scores what I can remember as his only ever goal in Newcastle colours, in as far as the Premier League is concerned, and I stand to be corrected on that one, with Anthony Gordon providing the assist to make it 2-1, and eventually it finished that way. Now, Tottenham are so poor and so pathetic. I mean, and according to the manager, Thomas Frank, and I don't think he should be saying this to the fans or to the media, he just has to find a way. But he says that he seems to suggest that Tottenham cannot compete in the Premier League and in Europe at the same time. And he was saying, of course, this has been going on for the last 2 years. We saw what happened to them last year when they went all the way through to win the UEFA Europa League, but almost got themselves relegated, finishing 17th on the Premier League globe, which culminated into the sacking of Ange Postecoglou, because while they welcomed their first major trophy after 17 years, last year, having last won a major trophy back in 2008 when they beat, I think, Chelsea in the finals of the Carabao Cup by 2-1 to win that one. they decided it was time to call it to call an end to that relationship between them and Ange Postecoglou. And whatever happened last season is not much far away from what is happening this season, because this season you have a Tottenham Hotspur side that are doing fairly well in the UEFA Champions League on one hand and doing so poorly on the other hand in the Premier League. Because as we speak, I think they've now lost what? About 10 games in the Premier League? In fact, 11. 11 games they've lost in the Premier League. They have slipped to 16th. That's one place above where they finished last season. As we speak, conversations about potential relegation are happening about Tottenham Hotspurs. And guess what? And this is where I have to, unfortunately, go back to the West Ham result. West Ham's dropped 2 points. Will feel like 3, because had they won that game, they were going to go to 26 points, which would put them on level of points with Nottingham Forest, who are 17th place, and only 3 points behind Tottenham Hotspurs, who not so far back ago, they beat by 2-1. And, oh my God, we're talking about a Tottenham Hotspur side that for the last 10 years or so had been always competing for UEFA Champions League places. Now, for the second year running, they have to keep looking over their shoulders, not in how far they are to the top 4 or top 6, but on how close they are with relegation. In romantic terms, you could say they are flirting with relegation, because in any case, they're only 5 points ahead of West Ham. And with 12 games still to play for them and all those other teams that have played 26 games until this point in the season, they'll know that anything is possible. Thomas Frank says he has to turn it around. And he said he's more than 100% sure he will be in charge come next weekend, but one, when they take on Arsenal in the North London Derby. Because remember, after these midweek games over the weekend, they'll be involved in the 4th round of the FA Cup. And then after the FA Cup games, they'll play only Arsenal, and Wolves will play a midweek game. That will be next week on Wednesday. And then the subsequent week, I think it will be a Sunday. Stand to be corrected. 22nd. Yes, it will be a Sunday. Arsenal will play away to Tottenham Hotspurs. You know? So just imagine if Arsenal were to beat up against Tottenham Hotspurs at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which is very possible, by the way. Because for starters, we know that Tottenham have not been doing themselves any favors and wonders at home. We're talking about a side that has already beaten them 4-1 in the earlier meeting on in the season. We're talking about the table leaders who are capable of beating up against any team this season. In fact, the only teams they've not beaten up against this season in the Premier League is Liverpool, who beat them at Anfield and drew with them at the Emirates Stadium. They've not yet beaten up against Man City because they are yet to play the second leg after the first leg ended in a 1-1 draw. They've not yet beaten up against Chelsea in the Premier League. They only beat them in the EFL Cup. They are yet to play the second leg. The first leg ended in a 1-1 draw. They beat up against Aston Villa by 4-1, who had beaten them 2-1 in the first leg. They beat up against Man United opening weekend of the season. So I'm trying to look around. Maybe because even some of those teams against which they've drawn, like Nottingham Forest, like who else? Try to remember the teams that forced Arsenal into draws. But they've managed to beat up against on some of those. So anything is possible. So by the time we finish match day, it will be match day 27. And maybe it will be match day 27 for the rest of the Premier League, but that will be Arsenal's 28th game of the season. Because like I said, after midweek, and next week, midweek, they will have a game against Wolves. So imagine after that game weekend, and then suddenly, maybe Nottingham Forest have won, maybe even they win today, and they catch up with Spurs, and they are level on points at 29. Now, of course, Nottingham Forest have a very, very poor goal difference, and so do West Ham. So that will still give Tottenham Hotspur some cushion if the sides were to go level on points. But it's to suggest or to point to you how bad things are for this Tottenham Hotspur side and Thomas Frank. So they did not paint themselves in any glory as they lost that, game yesterday, So Thomas Frank, things are not happening for him the way he would have hoped, the way he would have wanted, and it's just what it is. It's so bad. They're so bad. And they must find a way to turn things around. Because whereas it is possible that they could go all the way and win the UEFA Champions League, what would it be to them if they win the UEFA Champions League and get relegated? Of course, for the Tottenham fans, that will be partly okay because you win the UEFA Champions League, that's going to go on your record forever. It's bragging rights. It means you've beaten Arsenal to winning it fast and things like that. But Nasser Toshabe is a Tottenham Hotspur fan here in Uganda and any other that could be out there, but it's not looking pretty. Anyways, let's move on to the news regarding Roberto De Zerbi. Now, Roberto De Zerbi has part ways with Olympique Marseille. Before we get to Roberto De Zerbi, yes, no haircut for Frank Illet following that 1-1 draw against Man United because he wants to see Man United win 5 consecutive games. 5 consecutive games before he cuts his hair. And I think today should be somewhere like 494 days, 94 days ever since he had a haircut, contrary to the 500 days that had been earlier communicated in last night's podcast. But yeah, I mean, he's going to get to the 500 days eventually because Man United do not have a game on the weekend. In fact, Man United do not have a game of football until possibly, I think, Saturday, 21st February. Why? They are only in the Premier League. They're out of the FA Cup. So after yesterday's results, I think they're going to go on a mini holiday. If the Premier League ever wanted a winter break, this is it for Man United. I mean, they have 13 or 12 days until their next match. That's an entire international break right there. So Man United players, if you see Man United players in clubs in Spain, in Madrid, if you see Man United players on the beaches in Dubai, if you see any of them in the Maldives, if you see any of them going to the USA to watch the NBA, if you see any of them visiting the Eiffel Tower in France, please do not wonder why Man United players are all over the place. Why? They have nothing to do between now and February 21st, when their next game will be. And their next game, of course, the next game will be played on, will be played on Monday 23rd. That's when they play, Monday 23rd February. And I just can't comprehend it. How does a team that plays on Tuesday, the 10th of February, have their next game 13 days later, and you have all these other teams that will have played games in between? How do Arsenal play on a Sunday late kickoff when they have played on a Wednesday of the same week, and United, who last played 13 days earlier, are going to play on Monday? But anyways, I think it's for TV reasons. I do not know. But yeah, that's what you should expect. So Frank Illet, not Frank Isla, like earlier on pronounced the name. It's illet. So he will have his haircut will have to wait. For those of you that are not familiar, please go and Google the name Frank Illet. Illet. It's Frank, and then Illet is ILLET. He's the Manchester United fan who is not trimmed his hair for the last 494 days. Still waiting for Man United's 5 consecutive wins. He thought, I was one of those that, I remember when I was doing the preview for the West Ham game, I was saying, please come with your barber because you're going to get the haircut. Well, it did not happen. And Bayern Munich, Borussia Dortmund, and all teams that love banter have been milking it for what it is, with all the sorts of, clips of haircuts and what. But that's the beauty of football, the banter that comes with it. We get to enjoy that. Anyways, about Roberto De Zerbi. Now, Roberto De Zerbi has left Olympique Marseille. Like Pedri said, although he seems to insinuate he should have gone to a much bigger club, but the Olympique Marseille is the team that came calling after he left Brighton and Hove Albion. Now, we understand. Now, after following the UEFA Champions League exit, Roberto De Zerbi almost left Olympique Marseille. We were hearing reports that he was resigning, and then apparently that never came around. So ever since the UEFA Champions League premature exit, because they thought they had gone through to the playoff rounds, and then, unbeknown to them, Real Madrid and Benfica game was still ongoing. And then the Benfica goalkeeper decides to score, and Benfica win 4-2 against Real Madrid, which meant on better goal difference, Benfica had advanced to the playoffs at the expense of Olympique Marseille. So they crashed out of the UEFA Champions League quite prematurely. And ever since then, Olympique Marseille, it's never felt the same. You've always felt a dark cloud hovering over the club, apart the possibility of Roberto De Zerbi leaving. Now, the Italian gaffer is highly praised for his tactical ingenuity, very good manager. I think he's not a very good player manager. I've seen him lose his head quite a couple of times with players. It's not immune to him, but overall, the way he handles those situations are not good. There's a feeling or a sound of a loose cannon in there in terms of his temper. I think he's not different from a Mauricio Sarri. No, but maybe Mauricio Sarri was a bit better. But he's not different from an Antonio Conte. That caliber of manager who sometimes will get their anger get in the way of managing players, individual players. So you have always felt that. And unfortunately, it just did not work out eventually. Over the weekend, I was watching their game against PSG, and they got obliterated. Now, we're talking about a PSG side that they managed to beat in the first leg by 0-0. But over the weekend, they got humiliated. They got obliterated. They got ripped to shreds. They were nowhere near competing with PSG. If this was a revengeful game for PSG, you'd think they overdid it. If it was retaliation for losing the first leg, that was beyond proportional force. It felt like Israel versus Gaza all over again. Ousmane Dembele scoring a burst in that one, Kivicha Kvaratskhelia coming off the bench to score in that one, Lee Kang-in scoring in that one, and then Medina's own goal. I mean, they got beat 5-0. So, after that humiliating performance and result, the two parties have decided to go separate ways. And I don't know, I was thinking to myself, could Roberto De Zerbi be another glorified tactician who may never win anything? Because I remember in yesteryears, when Mauricio Pochettino was in charge of Tottenham Hotspurs, they competed favorably well across different competitions, including reaching the finals of the UEFA Champions League in 2019. At one point, they finished second in the Premier League. On another turn, they came so close. And remember 2015, 2016, when they were pushing Leicester City, and eventually they fell away after, even in that game against Chelsea, where they led by 2-0, and then Eden Hazard did a number on them. I always felt that Mauricio Pochettino was good for making teams compete but not winning. He just could not cross over that line until he went to PSG and won something, you know. And we know with PSG's resources, some titles are almost a given that you ought to win. The French League One, maybe a Trophy de Champs, a French Cup, you know, or commonly known as the Coupe de France, you know. And Roberto De Zerbi is a good manager. We saw what he was able to do at Brighton. We've seen him at Olympique Marseille. But unfortunately for him, some of their recent results have not been good. And they eventually got, you know, they eventually had to part ways. Remember, match day 8 of the UEFA Champions League, I think they lost to Club Brugge by 3-0. That was a bad result. They also lost to Liverpool by 3-0 in the UEFA Champions League. That was for their final 2 games of the UEFA Champions League. Then in the French Cup, they beat up against Stade Reims by 3-0. They had a 2-2 draw against Paris FC in the French League One, a 3-1 victory against Lens. Now, when you see a 3-1 victory against RC Lens, who are second on the French League One table, about 7 points behind the leaders PSG, one would think that that's a very decent team. That's the Roberto De Zerbi kind of team that gets results, and then they come and get obliterated by PSG. It did not. I remember watching that game and the result, and I was thinking to myself, how does he survive for a second time after almost leaving the club in January? And unfortunately, the two parties have decided to part ways. What does that mean for Arsenal's Ethan Nwaneri? Because critical or key to them letting go to Olympique Marseille was that he would get to work under a very demanding coach, a teaching coach in Roberto De Zerbi. So it's been 3 weeks in, or maybe 2.5, and then everything has gone sideways, and the manager is leaving or has left. So that's how bad it is. That's how bad it is, you know. So yeah, they get to part ways, and we'll have to wait and see who will take charge of Olympique Marseille going forward. But yeah, it is what it is. He leaves Olympique Marseille, and like we love to say, the rest will be history. The rest will be history. Okay, let's move on to what there is to come in as far as today's is concerned. Of course, the Premier League match day 26 does continue. You know, before we move on to today's games in the Premier League, yesterday, Casemiro scored a goal and it was ruled out. And for me, while I may not have been 100% in agreement, because in Arsene Wenger's proposal that a player should be deemed to be offside if they are entirely beyond the last defender. I do not understand why an arm is ruled to be offside if when it scores a goal, that goal does not stand. Because Casemiro scores a good goal and is deemed to be offside. That goal gets ruled out by VAR. And why? He's in an offside position. By the stretch of his arm, I mean, his 4 or 5 fingers were in an offside position. I think that's cruel for football. Now, I understand if we make it a gray area where we leave it to the discretion of the referees that teams will get away with so much. But for me, an arm shouldn't be offside, because if you score with any other part of the body, it's a goal. Whether it's with your nose, whether it's with your mouth, whether it's with your eyes or eyelashes or eyebrows, whether it's with your bum, with your shoulder, with your back, with your tongue, with your ears, any part of the body you may score with, that's a goal, other than the hand. So why should we judge a player to be in an offside position if it is the hand that is in an offside position? I'll leave that to the rule makers. But anyways, continuing today, in terms of match day 26, today at 10:30 p.m., Aston Villa will be at home against Brighton and Hove Albion. We've already done the reviews for these games. That's why we're not going to dwell on them. Yesterday morning, we did a review for Man City versus Fulham, Sunderland, Liverpool, then all the other games on Monday night. We did a preview for them, so you can go back to the live section of the channel and look at those, previews for those of you that are interested in our thoughts. So at 10:30 p.m., Aston Villa play Brighton, Crystal Palace play Burnley, Manchester City play Fulham, Nottingham Forest play Wolverhampton Wanderers, Sunderland at 11:15 entertain Liverpool. Now, yesterday we had the headline on here for our live broadcast in the morning, which said Man City face Fulham in a very easy fixture. Man City take on Fulham in easy fixture. And a lot of people, of course, they disagree. And like I said, I do not say it's an easy fixture in the literary sense of it, but I say it because of the history between Man City and Fulham. Ever since Pep Guardiola took charge of Man City, Fulham have never won a game against Man City. They have never drawn a game against Man City. The two sides have met 15 times across all competitions, 12 in the Premier League. And Man City has won all the 12. They've met twice in the FA Cup. Man City has won all those. They've met once in the EFL Cup or Carabao Cup. Man City won that. Man City have scored, I think, about 45 goals in those games and conceded only 10. Now, I understand the first leg was quite edgy at Craven Cottage and it ended 5-4 in favor of Man City. I understand that Marco Silva, the Fulham manager, says, well, they do not have the good history against Man City, but every game is an opportunity to change that. I do not see him changing that. Pedro Bola, you say you had Sao Paulo. Not really. What happened? Man United lost after the best run. They did not lose. They drew. I don't think it will feel like a loss for Man United if they are the ones who scored an equalizer in the 96th minute. They'll feel that they rescued a point and their unbeaten run literally continues. For example, their unbeaten run in the Premier League continues. But like I was saying, like 5 wins can't be fulfilled. Yeah, that's why Frank Illet will have to wait for his haircut. His haircut will have to wait, So really, you can imagine having that kind of record against a team. 15 games played, 15 games won, only 10 goals conceded. You've scored what? You've scored 45 goals. You've only conceded 10. That's as good as a record. And that's the best record Pep Guardiola has on any other team. You say, like, I'm waiting for the UEFA Champions League so bad. It will return. It does return, in fact, I think next week. That's when it returns for the playoffs. That's when the first legs will be played. And then the subsequent week, we'll get the reverse fixtures and then determine the 8 teams that will be advancing to the round of 16 officially. So yeah, That's that. Speaking of Man United, what are the dates for the UEFA Champions League round of 16? Do you have any kind of information? Like I have exams. Oh, they come in March. I think I think it should be after the international break. Um, when it comes to when it comes to you know when it comes to those fixtures, when they will be played. So for excuse me, oh come on. So next week, midweek, that's when you have the playoffs, first leg between the. This is going to be. Oh, yes, this is going to be around the 17th and I think 18th, right? Of February. That's when you're going 15th and 18th of February. That's the first leg. Then the second leg will be played on the 24th and 25th of February. Then we'll go for the round of 16. That will be between 10th and 12th March. 10th and 12th March. That's when the first legs will be played. And then after that, I think we'll go for the international break. And after the international break, the second legs will be played. That's what I do suspect. Oh, actually, that's not the case. They'll be played the subsequent week. So in 2 subsequent weeks. So 10th and 12th, sorry, between 10th and 12th for the round of 16 is the first leg. And then the second leg between the 17th and 19th of March, respectively. So that's according to the UEFA schedule. How did you reach to Rice 2 free kicks last year? Oh, how did you react to the Rice free kicks? Okay, I mean, I did not see that coming. I mean, for all the years I've watched Declan Rice, I didn't know he could smack the ball that perfectly well. I mean, it was just a perfect day in office. I remember, first of all, you go into a game with a lot of skepticism if you're facing Real Madrid. Why? Because you know they are the best team in Europe and they can beat up against anyone. However, I had done a video on this channel on why I thought Real Madrid should be afraid of Arsenal, and we talked about the strong points and etc. etc. But it was surprise, it was joy, it was a celebration, it was elation, it was every emotion that you can think of when that ball hits the back of the net. It was disbelief in any case. You say, I never thought he could shoot the second one. Again, for me, even the first one was a surprise of itself. And then he smacks in the second one. And I remember the commentator says, you only get to do that once in a lifetime, but Declan Rice had done it twice against Real Madrid in 12 minutes. You know, you say the Bernabeu pretty much drums like 90 minutes on Bernabeu are too many long. then Arsenal won that 3-0. Then they went to the Santiago Bernabeu. Real Madrid said it was going to be a closed roof. And then they got cooked in their own saucepan, in their own rice cooker, because Bukayo Saka and Gabriel Martinelli scored to win it 2-1 for Real Madrid. You say Saka versus Carvajal was lit. Yeah, that was lit. Thank you so much, Pedro Bola. So we're looking at Man United in terms of their results. When you look at their results, and I want to go down to I want to find the most recent, which is West Ham. 1-1, 2-0 Spurs, 3-2 Fulham, 3-2 Arsenal, 2-0 Man City. Their last loss was against Brighton, but that was in the FA Cup. But in the Premier League, against Burnley, 2-2, against Leeds, 1-1, against Wolves, 1-1. That's how many? That's already about 8 games. And they beat Newcastle 1-0. Their last defeat in the Premier League came on the 21st of December against Aston Villa when they lost by 2-1. Prior to which they had shared the spoils in a 4-all draw against Bournemouth and a 4-1 victory against Wolves, and then a 1-all draw against West Ham. So Man United are unbeaten, I think, in the last I think 8 or 9 Premier League games. You say, from when are you following football? From when? Okay. First of all, as a boy, I've loved football my entire life, for as long as I can remember. Even though I did not play much of it, besides the amateur level of, school and stuff and village football, starting to follow football or international football started in, I think, around 2000. Now, actually, before 2000, I have distant, foggy memories of the 1998 World Cup. I remember there was a church on a hill somewhere. The Reverend had a TV, and we would go and watch. But we could barely understand much of what we were watching in terms of teams. I think we got to watch, I don't know if it was the glimpse of the finals of the final between Brazil and France. So because I had jagged memories about that, in 2000, they bought chewing gum. Now that chewing gum was called football. So what it was, on the inside of the ceiling, you had football players wrapped around that chewing gum. So if you bought chewing gum, if you opened the chewing gum, you could find maybe a Ronaldo Nazario Darima, you could find a Rivaldo, you could find a Ronaldinho, you could find a Patrick Mboma, you could find an Edgar Davids, you could find a Rigobert Song, you could find a player like Justin Okocha, Nadine Zidane, that kind of thing. So we would get those football players, and after chewing the gum, would use that gum to stick those players in booklets. So, for example, let me try to demonstrate this, and I hope. Okay, so you get a book like this, and then stick those players in a certain order, very organized, using that chewing gum. So we gathered books, and by that time it was fancy to have collected those players or having a collection of those players. So you'd have that book filled with those, players that you got from those chewing gum wrappings. So that's when I think the love continued to grow more, because I always loved the Brazil team. I supported it because of Ronaldinho, because of Nazario Darima, Nelson Dida, Caf, Roberto Carlos, and then that's around 2000. Now, 2001, I go from village life to town life. So when I do the move, let me respond to those in a bit. When I do the move, I start listening to radio, football on radio, and it was as a coincidence. You know how you turn on radio and then there's football commentary? Then I started listening to, football commentary, So I continued to love the game. Then I get to 2000, and I think it was 2002 or 2003. No, not 2003. But anywhere between there. So I'm in class, and for some reason, I don't know who and why, but there's a newsprint that has been stuck on the plywood, because our classroom then had been divided by a plywood. So you had primary I think primary 3 and then primary 4 on the other side. And that was 2002, I think. Yes, 2002. Oh, wait. I'm trying to get the proper math, because 2003 is primary 5, 2002 is primary 4, 2001 is primary 3. Yes, around 2001. Yeah. So that newsprint had Patrick Vieira on him. He was wearing that, I don't know if it was purplish Arsenal jersey of O2. So I see him in a tussle for the ball, and he's black, and I related to that. At that time, I'd started hearing, Arsenal, and things like that. And that's how I decided to support Arsenal. And then I'd seen, I think, pictures of Thierry Henry in the newspaper, but for me, it was always football first. So I started supporting Arsenal, from there. And so I started listening to radio commentary over the weekend whenever I could afford it. So I began to follow football. I did not have access to go and watch it on TV, so I could only follow commentary from radio. Then we go through it, 2003, 2004, Arsenal win the league title, unbeaten season. By then, we're in boarding school. We are sneaking in small radios to, again, listen to football over the weekend and nights, things like that of the UEFA Champions League. But of course, you cannot play it too loud. Then sometimes you're listening to the game, you fall asleep while listening to it, and your radio plays out through the entire night, you run out of batteries, and things like that. Anyways, so that's when I started following football a lot more. So which team do you support? Like I said, I do support Arsenal. Brazil, Arsenal, Uganda Cranes. I've had a love for Sports Club Villa. That's a local club here, which sort of dwindled because of the poor ongoings within club football. And then, that's about it, really. So, yeah. How much revenue do you get from this channel? I've not gotten a penny from this channel. It's not yet monetized, to answer your question. So none. So your continued love and support, you're watching my content, is what will help us get to that point. But yeah, not a penny. I've had some generous people hoping or wanting to extend a bit of support to this channel, but because it's not monetized, I cannot put membership, I cannot put pecs for donations or any merchandise. So yeah, Casbro, that's Sarudizia UG, thank you. Then Becca says black or yellow? Black any day. Give me black. White, navy blue, black. Those are my favorite colors, I think. So yeah, that's about it, guys. That's about it. I hope I've answered all your questions. Thank you so much, Pedro Bola, for that. So in case we get there, we cross that bridge. You'll be able to see when we put up membership stuff. If we ever get there, fingers crossed, we will get there someday to that point. But for now, we are not yet there. We've not yet crossed that bridge. I will not yet cross that bridge. So continue with the love and support. Go over to the channel, watch the videos from the video section. Leave me a comment on those videos from the live broadcasts that have ended. In case there's any that you missed, just go on the channel under the live section, go to the short section, go to the video section and watch all that content. And you continue to support the channel so that we can continue to grow. Otherwise, thank you so much for the love and support. Baka says, what do you think about Turkish Super League, Osman Galatasaray? Baka, I'll be honest with you, I do not watch much or enough of it for me to give you an educated opinion. However, based on what I see of them in the UEFA Champions League, is where I can give you snippets of what I have, my impressions about them. When I get to watch teams like Besiktas, when you find teams like Fenerbahce in the UEFA Europa League, of course Galatasaray in the UEFA Champions League, they've done fairly okay. I think they've been more intentional recently in terms of investing more in their clubs, with the signings of the likes of Leroy Sané to Galatasaray, of course, with players like Ilkay Gundogan, with players like Victor Osimhen. We've seen Ederson Moraes go over to Turkey. We saw John Duran, although he was only there on loan. We've seen Fenerbahce sign Matteo Gondouzi from Lazio. So we've seen them, the Turkish league sort of raid the Saudi Pro League market to try and get some of those elite players, and that kind of thing. And it does continue that way or in that direction. So I think they're trying to get themselves back competing again, but also Turkish football hasn't been without its controversies. Not too far back ago, we had those reports about, how many Turkish referees run betting accounts and things like that. And then you can't help but wonder what kind of impact that has on the game if you have elite, match officials holding betting accounts and things like that. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, but I think Galatasaray will continue to dominate, and Fenerbahce want to break through that, but Galatasaray remain that dominant side. Okay, 121 Fresh says hi. Hi, 121 Fresh. Hello to you too. Good to have you on the broadcast. You say 419, 419. What does that mean? What does that mean? Guys, allow me wrap it up here. It's been a nice conversation this morning. Thank you so much. Pedri Bola 121 Fresh. Baka, thank you so much, Pedri. Thank you so much, OR. And every single one of you that has chipped into this broadcast, that has sent in a comment, those that liked, those that were unable to like or comment, but still watched, even if it was for 5 minutes. Thank you so much for always sparing the moment, the time to give us your dedication or to give us your love and support. We do appreciate it a great deal. Allow me wish you a wonderful rest of the day. Let's catch up tonight at 11 p.m. As we follow the events from the continuation of match day 26 of the Premier League in those fixtures that I've given you. And we already give our predictions. For those of you that are interested in knowing them, go back to yesterday morning's podcast and the Monday night broadcast. That's where you'll get all that information. But yeah, it's always a pleasure. Let's do it again later. Otherwise, go over to the channel and subscribe if it's your first time here. Go over to the channel and watch all that other content. Stay blessed, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye for now.